At long last, it is time. The moment we've all been waiting for. The composition submission. So, thank you all for your patience. I'm sure by the time this video goes up, it'll have been a week, 2 weeks out of April. I was just in Los Angeles for a trip, came back, saw that I had over just about 40 submissions from you guys. So I was like, crap. So I'm sure this process will be a little longer than I anticipated. Most likely what I'm going to be doing is breaking this up into a multi-part video. So if you're watching this, this will be the first installment, and I'll have another one coming soon once it's edited. So the way I thought we could do this is I'm going to give it a listen, maybe 30 seconds to a minute here, and then I'm going to give my constructive criticism, maybe cut to some shots of the piano to show you what I'm talking about, maybe give you some score examples, things like that, depending on what your piece is. And I will be going in alphabetical order by name because I think that's just going to be the easiest way to do it. So our first submission comes from Ann Miller, and I don't think I have a title for this piece. Let's give it a listen. Okay, I'm gonna go from this spot. Let's just talk about that section there. Really great composition. Your form is really solid. You've got kind of like an introductory section, which is nice, kind of establishes the key and the mood, and then you have this really pretty melody that comes in. What I would recommend now is playing with some inner harmony. So right now, most of your stuff in the middle section, or the thematic section of the piece, is melody, followed by bass, it sounds like, in low octaves. So I would play with some textural variation. So for example, maybe in one section you have a something like that, maybe an arpeggio. For recommendations on that sort of thing, check out some of Mozart's music. He does a technique very often called Alberti bass, which is just basically taking a chord and arpeggiating it in a sort of ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And those patterns are ways to kind of add some textural interest inside and to support the melody with the harmony. Overall, though, really great. Love the melody. Keep doing what you're doing. So, next submission. This is from, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, Aurelian Halapo. Really, really beautiful. I love the kind of wandering sense with the harmony in the beginning, and then it kind of locks into something more stable. It's really gorgeous. Your use of seventh chords, your use of occasional inversions is really nice. I would actually encourage you to play even more with inversions, particularly in the second section of your piece. So your first section has a lot of wandering harmony, your voice leading is solid with it, and that makes it really... You're taken along for the journey because of that. It supports the changing harmony. So I would say with second section of your piece, it's more conventional, it's kind of more rooted in a key. I'd say maybe inversions could have some power there. Maybe you could use a second inversion chord near the end of the piece, which usually indicates that the end or cadence is coming. I would also say with the beginning of your piece, your melody or the upper part, kind of has a bum, 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 bum. You might want to consider varying that a little bit. So maybe you have like something like that. It'll just give your intro, I think, a little bit more interest in the melodic section, because the harmony is so interesting and wandering. I think the melody could work to support that too. But really beautiful. Really, really love it. So next up we have a piece by Badikan Iskan called Humanity. Okay, I want to work with that section. So, really nice. You've got a very memorable melody in there. You're playing with texture really nicely, where you have kind of a quieter intro, and then you build it up into kind of this full octaves thing with some power. A couple technical notes, one technical note actually. That very beginning, you have this arpeggio that kind of rolls down, cascades down. So the way you currently have the arpeggio is from way up here, going all the way down to that D. That's just way too fast for the right hand to tackle. So what we could do is one of two things. Number one, we either drop the left hand pattern that's doing this and allow it to kind of help with the arpeggio. So we would do something like this. Or we slow down the arpeggio so that the right hand can tackle it on its own, which would be like this. Also, with your melody, it's a really strong melody. And typically, the way that composition works, at least in my opinion, is it's a play between expectation and then breaking that expectation. So when you establish a melody for the first time, this is, you can assume, the first time that a listener would be hearing it. When you repeat a melody, you're giving them kind of a comfort to know that, okay, this is something important, I'm hearing it twice. When you repeat it a third time, it risks becoming like stale or repetitive, overly repetitive. So what you can do is you can vary it in some way. One way would be taking the melody and adding some like ornamentation. Bum ba da dum ba da 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 ba ba da 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 dum. Another thing that you could do is to reharmonize it. So maybe this first section you have that D section. You've been going to a B flat major chord. Maybe you could try instead, the third time, going for a G major chord. It would give the piece like a different color for that section, and it would offer kind of an exciting change to the piece. Really nice piece though, really love it. Next we have Bright Shadows, The Dawn of the Night. Alright, really grooving. You've got some cool riffs going on in the piano section. The drums sound great too. The arrangement has kind of a nice build to it. I would say the same thing as before. I would play with the idea of breaking repetition a little bit. So you've got this riff that comes in, and sometimes it's even as simple as just modulating that riff. It sounds like it's in D minor now. I would try seeing maybe you have ba-da-dum, bum, 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 dum, dum, da-da-da. Bring it to G for a second, just to bring it to a new place, new color, add in some new instrumentation. Also, I would play with your mix a little bit. It sounds like right now you've focused on the compositional element, and with pieces that are kind of geared towards commercial music, there's an opportunity to play with more of the production element. So for example, panning is a very simple thing. Seeing maybe you get some of these instruments panned hard left, hard right. Important instruments generally go in the center. That'll give your piece a little bit more space and room to breathe because it's a dense piece and it has power. It'll help to support that power. Also, reverb can go a long way. Adding reverb for things that you want to sound a little farther back in the mix and keeping things that you want to sound forward in the mix dry. Play with space. Listen to some different kinds of music. Listen to Hans Zimmer's music. Listen to Thomas Newman if you want. They both play with space in very interesting ways with their music, and it really helps to support the composition. Really cool. Keep up the good work. Our next submission is Cameron Lee Simpson, Baroque Piece in F. Beautiful. Beautiful. Really, really good form to your piece. You've introduced kind of the idea of stating an idea, moving away from it, returning to it. It sounds like your form was something like ABACA. And for those of you who don't know, that just means idea, different idea, first idea, another different idea, first idea. Kind of like a rondo. So a lot of really great things working with your piece. The form, like I said, is great. The melody is great, very catchy. You have some really funny musical ideas going on. Like when you get to the C section of your piece, you start to modulate in kind of shocking ways, which is great because you're saving that excitement for the very end of the piece. Couple suggestions, I would say with your A section, you might consider playing with rhythm a little bit. Right now, your left hand is kind of just establishing the bass, and it's establishing it on downbeats. Bum, 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 bum. You might be able to play with that a little bit. Play with offbeats a little bit. Look at where your melody falls, and see if your bass can interact with the spaces in the melody a little bit, because that'll add a little bit extra interest and make it just a little bit more exciting for that section. You could probably also play with some melodic ornamentation. So the first time, just have a melody straight as it is. Maybe the next time you have it have a little variation. Just little extra things to kind of keep those moments just a touch more interesting and colorful. But it's a really great piece. Love the form. I listened all the way through it. Really nice job. Next up, we have Chow Mei Tang III's Forest Minuet Re-Edit, which I think is really just Forest Minuet. Cool. All right. So I heard some interesting things in there. You're playing with kind of a modal piece where you have a certain mood that you're trying to evoke, it sounds like. It kind of reminds me of Ruins from Undertale. And what I would recommend is see if you can isolate or determine what the main theme or motive of that piece is. So right now what I'm hearing is color. What I'm not hearing as much prominently is melody. Not to say that every piece needs a melody, but I think if you can isolate a little section of your piece, figure out where it is, just lock it in, I think it'll help you to consolidate your ideas because it'll be a more solid foundation for you. So let's listen again. I just want to point out maybe a certain spot. I heard a spot over here that sounded very promising because you had a repetition and it kind of gave my ear something to lock onto. Yeah, this. That section right there has some promise. It has something about it just kind of locked me in. And maybe intuitively you felt like that too, and that's why you repeated it. So I would say find and identify that piece of the melody. And then when you've identified it, don't be afraid to really bring it out because for a lot of listeners, it might be the first time that they're hearing your piece, and what they want is some sense of foundation. So that could be as simple as get your melody, bring it in octaves for a piece like this. That way you're really establishing, hey, this is my melody, take a listen to it. Start off with some solid repetition, and then start to introduce the variety and the variations in your piece so that they have a foundation that they're working with that they can then kind of follow you along on that journey for. Really cool piece, really interesting harmonies that you're playing with. Definitely experiment more. I'm excited to see what you come up with. Next we have Krishna, I'm probably going to pronounce this name wrong, I'm so sorry. Krishna Lungala with a piece called, it says, Drive Now, Be First. So it's one of those titles probably, or both. Really, really solid. You have a very strong grasp on your orchestration. Sounds like you knew exactly what you were going for. You're really able to execute it with confidence, with realism. Those instruments sounded great. Your mix sounded great. I love the interaction between the orchestra and the piano. And I'm also hearing kind of some subtle things going on with harp to support the strings, which is really, really nice. I don't have too much to say about this piece, honestly. It sounds like you feel very confident with your voice and with the piece that you've developed. In terms of recommendations on people, I got a bit of a Dario Marianelli vibe, if you know that composer. He's done some work for films like Atonement. Really excellent composer with kind of a leaning towards the old school of classical music. If you don't know him, I definitely recommend you check him out because I think you'd be very inspired by him. If I had two very, very small comments, I would say that middle section where your cello takes the melody, I believe it's a cello, maybe you'd consider playing with some legato patches for your ba-da-da-dun-dun because the rest of the piece is very staccato, and I think maybe that could help just add a little bit of extra color and realism to the piece. Also, the piano, to my ears, and you might disagree, but I think the piano could have a touch more reverb and feel a little bit more in the room just to support how realistic the string space sounds in the harp space. You've got the piano in the forefront, and I get it because you have a little bit less reverb on it, but maybe even just a small room reverb just to get it a little bit more in there. I think it'll help make the whole mix feel very cohesive. It sounds fantastic though, and those are very small, probably subjective comments, so definitely keep up the great work. Next we have a piece by Colton James Fenner called Riverlands. Okay, I'm going to work with that section, even though with all these submissions I've wanted to hear a little bit more, just for time's sake. Really beautiful, really beautiful piece. I can kind of hear your influence from the composers of spaghetti western music. I can hear maybe a little bit of Copland in there, some Elmer Bernstein. It's really beautiful. You have really solid melody, and you've committed to it in a way that it's instantly memorable, which I think is fantastic. Your orchestration is also very good. I think it's time for you to upgrade your setup, especially if you're doing this as a part-time or full-time job, being a composer. Definitely time to upgrade your setup, get some new VSTs, because one thing that I found is realism is extremely important for commercial music until you get to a point where you can afford an orchestra, which I am certainly not at yet. So I would check out 8Dio's Century Brass for your horn. I love their French horn. It sounds fantastic. Strings, I use LA Scoring Strings. You could try LA Scoring Strings Light. You could also try East West Hollywood Strings. Find things that have legato patches, because from what I'm hearing, a lot of your patches sound like they're sustain-based, which is fine, but if you want to get a really realistic sound, you want to find something with legato, or even better, true legato, where they actually sample every note followed by any other note. It's really incredible that they can do it. Also, I would play with some additional parameters. You might be playing with it a little bit, but the modulation and the expression. I only started playing with the expression automation very recently. An expression is essentially just volume automation, whereas modulation is triggering different samples from the soft samples to the loud ones. Using both in combination can get you some really powerful expressive tools, particularly with horn and things like that. Having your horn kind of swell in. You want to kind of look for those arcs and the breathing space in your piece. That'll really bring that piece to another level and give it a whole nother level of expressiveness, kind of to support the composition that you've already got. Great work, though. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for the submission. Next, we have Connor Langdon's Drums and Piano. Hopefully that playback was okay. You sent me a MIDI file, and sometimes with MIDI, the instruments playback can be a little bit different from computer to computer. So you've got some interesting patterns going on there. I would say the theme of your piece is really that ba-dum, ba-da-da-dum-bum. And kind of the time signature really is the, it seems like the main idea of the piece that you're going for. I think there is a lot of room to play with the drums in particular, because the drums right now are kind of just serving as almost like a metronome's purpose. There is some variation in there, but it sounds like you focus most of your compositional effort on the piano. So I would think of these instruments as real players, and think if I was the drummer, would I be satisfied with this part playing it repeatedly, or would I want some variation? And if I want variation, where would I want it? Maybe have more interchange between the piano and the drums. Maybe you could have ba dun 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 da 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 dun 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 dun. Just things that kind of interact back and forth between what the piano's doing and what the drum's doing. Especially if it's a duo, piano and drums. If you think of them like characters with personalities, it can help you to kind of get some compositional ideas on how they would interact with each other. I would say if you have musician friends that you know who could play that for you, have them play it, because you'll learn a lot. And ask them what they think, get their true opinions on the way that you've written for their instruments. It can be very helpful. Keep up the cool work. All right, we are going to do one more submission for this first part of the video, and then we will pick it up with part 2. So let's take a listen to this last one here. Dante de Jong's Iron. Cool, all right, nice groove. I like the feel, I like the choice of instrumentation. I have a couple suggestions, some are technical and some are more creative. On a technical level, it sounds like there is one loop that you got in the guitar that is just a little bit off. The rest of the piece is very quantized, which makes it really like lock into a groove. The guitar, it sounds like there's one section, ba-dum. It sounds like you have a note maybe that's coming in a little bit early, and it seems to repeat. So I would just check and make sure that that guitar is perfectly quantized, like the rest of the piece, if that's how you want it. Also, I would say the piece has some room for development, probably past the 40-second mark. You've started to layer on ideas and instrumentation, which is really cool. My ear was ready for a change, I think, at that point. Whether it's the introduction of a bass, maybe, some kind of synth bass I was hearing. Something like that, just to kind of give it a little bit extra oomph. I would also play with your mix a lot, because I think there's opportunities for that. In the drums, you kind of have this... I would say, listen to some drum music or music that you like. Pay attention to what the percussion's doing and how it's mixed and what extra effects are added. Oftentimes, with that kind of music, what I'll do is I'll bounce out the snare sound, I'll reverse it, and I'll put it right before the second and fourth snare. So it'll be like dun 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 ka dun 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 shka. And then on the fourth snare, I'll add a little bit more reverb than the rest of the snares. So in that way, when it repeats, it's slightly different for about 4 times before it repeats. Keeps it from being overly repetitive and adds a little bit of extra color in there. But really nice work, really, really groovy. And that ends part 1. So I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. And if there's anything you want me to do differently for part 2, just let me know. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye.